If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I'm super happy to be sewing along with you the Penny In Wallet by Chris W Designs. All I can say about this is, wow. How she managed to design a bag that doesn't have too many thicknesses, that holds so much. Let me show you some of the features of this bag. So this one is actually intended to be made in cottons. I have made it in faux leathers. This is the obsidian, or the pearl vinyls, obsidian black and green bean pearl vinyls from Galaxy Customs. My lining was just from Just Sew. I've used it in a couple projects now. It's a glimmer, I don't remember what it's called, but if you watch my cutting tutorial, you for this bag, I do tell you what these are called. Yeah, let me show you some of the features first. So it uses this large slip lock. This is from Emmaline bags. So when you open it up, you're going to be just in shock. So on this side here, we have 8 card slots. We have a large slip pocket there, plenty of room here. This middle section has 2 zipper pockets and a large area here that could fit your phone, I think. And then, of course, another slip pocket here. When you unclip this snap here, you get a section that lays flat with 8 more card slots here, 4 card slots and a ID card slot here, another zipper pocket and another slip pocket. Like seriously, that is 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 21 card slots in this bag and 3 zipper pockets and 1, 2, 3, 4 slip pockets. Like seriously. Now, as I said, this one was written for cotton fabrics. I do have an industrial machine, so I did not have problems getting through any of the thicknesses of this. Where I found it the most thick was where we join it right here. Can you guys see? It's kind of out of focus there. This is a lot of thickness here. So just know the sensitivities of your machine when you're choosing out your fabrics. If you are on an industrial type machine, you will not have any problems doing it in vinyls like I did. What else? Now there's very, very, very minimal interfacing in this. And I will honestly say I was worried about the lining pieces not being interfaced on my industrial, because my industrial is made for medium to heavy fabrics. And seriously, we do not put woven interfacing on all of the lining pieces. That is how this thickness is kept down, so you don't have a super chunky wallet, but a large wallet at the same time. I had absolutely no problems with it on my 1541. The way things line up makes it into a medium type weight fabric, like with the folds and everything, that my machine did not eat this, thankfully, because I was worried. There are a few interfacing pieces, like in the welts, we do have some medium woven interfacing. I used EB Fuse Light from Emmaline bags. That's similar to an SF101. The main stabilizer in this, there's 2 pieces for the main body, and then this bottom shape here to give it this nice square shape, and it calls for in the pattern Peltex. I use Decovil Heavy. But besides that, there's no other interfacing. Very, very, very minimal interfacing in this. In this flap here, because I chose to use cotton, in the pattern it calls for fleece for the interfacing, but I used a small piece of Decovil Heavy, which I walk you through that in the cutting tutorial as well as in this tutorial. Fantastic pattern. Thank you so much, Chris, for allowing me to make this tutorial. Fabrics I used in this bag, I think I already said. These are the Galaxy Custom Pearl Vinyls in green bean and obsidian black. All my zippers, zipper pulls, and hardware is from Emmaline bags. What else? I don't know. I just love love it. We did do this in the May 2023 Tuesday classes. So if you'd like a slowed down version of how to make this, you can always join up to the membership side into the Tuesday and Thursday sew along group to catch the replays on this if you need that. Otherwise, I hope you do enjoy this tutorial. How about we get to making this wallet?
Okay, so you're going to need some number 3 zipper tape, 3 number 3 zipper pulls, a large flip lock, and a snap of some sort. Okay, so this is my tab here. Make sure I have my Decovil Heavy fuse on. Do not do that yet. We will do that later on. I have 2 sets of welt pieces mirrored to one another. The exterior piece you will have fused on your medium woven interfacing. Your bottom flap pieces lining exterior as well as the heavy stabilizer piece. Your main stabilizer pieces for the main body and the bottom. Your top flap, exterior lining and main stabilizer piece. Your ID window, I got this clear vinyl from Blue Calla. Now these are your card slot interfacing pieces. So 8 of these longer ones, I used EB Fuse Medium, which is similar to a Pelon 809, and then the 4 smaller ones. Your card pockets B1 and B2. Again, these are not interfaced. Your zipper pocket lining and exterior pieces. This is your ID slot backing. Zipper pocket A. And section A's 2 pieces there. Your exterior main. 2 body lining pieces. And card pocket A. And another your card pocket backing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we are going to do our little tab piece. Again, ignore the Decovil Heavy. I end up pulling that off here momentarily because it was impossible to turn through. So what I'm going to do is on one of the pieces, I'm going to mark on the lining side of the flap. Actually, I'm going to mark where my snap is going to go. So I just put a little hole in the center of my pattern piece mark here, and I'm going to mark it with my air erasing pen like so. Now, do not have your Decovil Heavy piece on here, but you're going to take these 2 pieces and you're going to put them right sides together. Going to leave the top straight part unsewn, and so around that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Next, I'm going to take my pinking shears and just kind of clip around this curve, as well as in those corners. I'm going to trim up my seam allowance and clip at the corners on an angle like this without cutting your seam allowance. Now, I had an impossible time turning this through with the Decovil Heavy piece, so I just tore it out, and then it was much easier to turn. Again, if you're using a fleece, you could definitely have that fused on. That wouldn't be so bad to turn, but because I have substituted in the Decovil Heavy piece, I was struggling, and it became unstuck, so I just unstuck it. Once you have that all turned, you want to make sure this is pressed out nicely. Poke out all of those corners and get that curve really nice and give it a good press. Now you're going to take that Decovil Heavy piece and you're going to slide it in like so. And the reason I chose this Decovil Heavy is because my snaps have kind of a long post, and I want to make sure that they are secured there and won't tear through my cotton pieces. So go ahead and press that into place. Once we have that, we can go ahead and we're going to top stitch all the way around and baste that top closed. Okay, so I still have my marking here. That's where I'm going to go and put the female side of my snap with the finished side that will go on the exterior of it, like so, with the snap on this side. I just get mine from Amazon and I'm going to install it by hand. So go ahead and do that. So that's all installed like that. And go ahead and put this aside for now. Okay, so now we're going to work on our flap top. So we're going to take our exterior and our lining, put them right sides together. And then we're going to sew all the way around, leaving that straight edge unsewn for turning with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now what we want to do is trim up the seam allowance again where we have our corners. I'm going to trim on an angle without cutting my seam allowances. Right here, I want a nice pointy edge, so I'm actually going to cut out a V as close as I can to that seam allowance, about 1/8 of an inch close to it if possible. Trim up the rest. And then once we have it all trimmed up, you can go ahead and turn this right side out. You can also grade the lining pieces if you want to reduce some thickness there. That's just cutting away some of the lining. I'm not going to worry about it because my machine won't have any issues getting through that. So make sure you press out all of the corners and all of the seams really well. This is the focal point of this wallet, and you want the shape to be as perfect as it possibly can be. So I went ahead and gave it a good press from the lining side, and now I'm going to take my Decovil Heavy piece and I'm going to stick it inside. Now you want to make sure that it is going so the seams are on the lining side of the Decovil Heavy. So kind of push it in all the way down, and then you can go ahead once you got it all placed properly and give it a nice press from the lining side to fuse that in place, making sure that you have at least a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, or it's at least 3/8 of an inch outside of the seam allowance along that top side. So that's mine is like that. We're going to do the exact same thing with the lower band piece. Okay, so now for this one, you want to make sure that the sticky side is against the exterior of this flat piece. So again, you're going to put it in just like the top piece and have the lining pieces or the lining seam allowances on the lining side. Go ahead and give it a good press to fuse that in place. Now I'm going to take a little bit of double-sided tape. There's actually a lot of double-sided tape used in this pattern. So if you're on a domestic and it's sensitive to double-sided tape, I use some Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape. It shouldn't gum up your needle too bad, but make sure you do a test to make sure it doesn't. So I'm going to take this with that tape and I'm going to fold this down and around against that Decovil Heavy piece. Then I'm going to take some more. It's going to make a nice rigid straight edge, which is what we want. And then we're going to put some more double-sided tape right along here. And then we're going to fold the lining raw edge under so it lines up nice and even with that exterior side that we just did, and then stick it together so our folds are nice and even. So kind of use your exterior as a guide and fold it under so they're nice and even, and stick it down in place like so. Kind of had to finagle the sides a little, but take your time here. You want this to look super nice. Okay, so that is all done, as you can see. So now what we're going to do is top stitch across the straight edge with 1/8 of an inch, and then go back in and do it with another 1/4 of an inch top stitch. So you will have 2 top stitch lines. Now this is what that looks like. Now we're going to take the top piece, and along the lining side with an erasable pen or some chalk, we're going to measure up 3/8 of an inch. I think it was 3/8, double check the pattern measurements here, and we're just going to draw a line. And this is going to be our guide for how we're going to place that bottom flap. So now we're going to take some more double-sided tape and put it underneath those lines that we had just drawn. And my double-sided tape I get from Galaxy Customs. And then what we're going to do is the shaped side of that bottom flap, you're going to notice is going to line up nicely with that line that we just drew on the top flap. So we want to put these like so, so both right sides down, and we are going to stick it in place like this. You want to make sure it's nice and even. I'm a little bit off, so I'm going to go ahead and redo that. Make sure we're nice and even on the sides, just like so. Stick it into place. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch down here, across here, all the way around here with 1/8 of an inch, go back in and do it with another 1/4 of an inch, leaving the top open for now. All right, so that's what that looks like done. It looks pretty nice. Okay, we can go ahead and we can set that aside for now. Okay, so now we want to pull out our body aligning pieces. You want to make sure you have them situated the right way. Do small snips in your top and the bottom. It helps to mark top at the top of these pieces. And I've marked all 4 of my centers on all sides. Put one of them to the side. Now we want to measure down as per the measurements in the pattern and draw a line. And then what we want to do is take the 2 lining pieces, put them right sides together, and we're just going to clip them right above that line that we had just drawn. And we're going to take our flat piece. You want to make it so the female part of the snap is facing up. I'm just marking my center here, and we're going to put it in between those layers like so, having about 1/8 of an inch or so sticking up over the seam, nice and centered. Clip that in place. Again, you want the female part of the snap facing upwards. Then we're going to go ahead and sew from the line up here across and down to the line again with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And just where that little flat piece is, I'm just going to go do another line of stitching within the seam allowance for extra security. Okay, so that is all done. Now I'm going to take my exterior piece, and I've marked all of my centers again. And we're going to kind of flip this out this way. So that part with the flap is kind of a floppy part in the middle there. We're going to clip this all the way around. Once you have one side clipped, you're going to go ahead and you're going to move the flap out and out of the way. You're going to match up that center mark right there and continue clipping around. All right, so the top side we are going to leave open. We are not going to sew through the top side for now, but what we want to do is sew the sides, but we do not want to be grabbing that floppy pocket in the middle. Along the bottom, we are going to leave an opening for turning. You'll see what that is. We're going to sew up here without catching that middle pocket and all the way up the sides. So once again, I'm going to start on the bottom at one of my lines where we're leaving the opening. We're sewing with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So across the bottom, and we're going to sew up to that middle pocket without catching that middle floppy pocket in the middle. So you want to get as close as you can. Very important you don't sew through this. Break your thread, flip that pocket out of the way, and get as close as you can to that pocket without sewing through the pocket, and finish the way up the side, leaving the top open. And then go ahead and sew down the opposite side in the exact same fashion to our other little line along the bottom where we're leaving the opening in the bottom of the bag. Okay, so now we're going to take our flap. We're going to make sure our exteriors are right sides together. We're going to stuff it into the middle of that opening we left at the top of this piece here. Line up the centers of all three, clip it into place. Again, we want the exterior of our flap to be right sides together with the exterior side of this main body piece. And we're going to sew across here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's all done, we're going to trim up our corners without cutting our threads, just to make it so we can have nice sharp corners. We're going to trim up our seam allowances everywhere except for around the turning hole, and I'm not going to trim it up around the flap, but if you're worried about thickness, you can definitely grade your lining pieces like so and just cut away some of the thickness of that lining piece. I'm just showing you how to do that here. Okay, and once that's done, you can go ahead and you can turn this right side out. Once you get that flap through, it turns nicely. Again, with the minimal interfacing, so easy to turn. Now you can see none of my sides got caught here, which means I did pretty good around that middle pocket. The first time I did it, I did catch that pocket and it made just like an ugly mess, so I had to pull it all out. So definitely make sure you do not catch that middle pocket. Okay. So see, that looks good there, and it looks good there. Now go ahead and give this a good press from the lining side if you like, and then it kind of gives you an idea what this exterior is going to look like. Okay, so I got my main body piece here. I've marked top. This is my Decovil Heavy main stabilizer. Measure up from the bottom as per the measurements in the pattern and draw a line. And then draw another line as per the pattern right above it. And what this is going to do is it's going to leave the exact same measurements for our second body stabilizer to make our bottom nice and rigid. So put a little bit of double-sided tape there. And then take this, the non-glue side down, and tape it in place. Now what we want to do is we want to place this with the sticky side against the exterior inside the bag. Make sure your Peltex piece is not going up into that middle pocket. Ask me how I know. I did it the first time. You want to line this up so the once you have it stuffed inside, the seam allowance is on the lining side, and you're getting this nice and even into there. If you need to trim it up a little bit, if it doesn't quite fit, definitely go ahead and do that. Again, make sure it's not on this middle floppy flat piece. You want it just in that main body piece. So take your time here to get it in there nicely. Give it a good press to adhere that glue. Okay, so that's all done. And I'm going to close this up. I've already kind of pressed the lining side seam allowance under. I'm just going to put a little bit of double-sided tape along here to wrap that exterior piece over that heavy stabilizer piece, just like we did with the flap. And the same with the lining piece. They should match up nicely. Okay, so now it is time to put in the male side of that snap. So you're going to find your center and you're going to measure up, I believe it was 5/8 of an inch. Make sure you double check your measurements, and you're going to install it through the exterior only, which I have done. Make sure it lines up perfect, and it does. She's starting to take shape. Next, I'm going to go ahead and on the back, I am going to put on my nameplate using kind of where that bottom stabilizer is. I believe I measured up about an inch or so, nice and centered, and that is where I installed my nameplate if you want to do that. And you're going to do that just through the exterior, through the opening of the bottom. Okay, so once again, just going to make sure everything lines up good. There's my nameplate. She looks wonderful. Now it's time to put in the female part of our flip lock. So measure it nice and centered. This flip lock should fit the shape of it there. So I believe it was 3/8 of an inch on either side of the top corners of the flip lock. I'm going to use my backing plate to get the shape and draw in my screws, and then I'm going to go ahead and punch that hole. Now I like this punch set that I just got off of Amazon. I just kind of look for the one that matches the shape the most, and then I take my mallet and I just hammer the hole through, and look how good that punches through, nice and clean. And then I go in with my hole maker, my punch, and I just punch out where those screws are going to have to go through to put this in place. Put my exterior piece here, flip it over, and put on my backing plate. So there is my female side of my flip lock installed. Now we want to install the male side. So you're going to measure up as per the measurements, nice and centered in the pattern, make a mark. And I did it just through my exterior fabric. I installed my flip lock in the pattern. She has it so you install it through all of the layers. You can definitely do that as it will be covered up. I just prefer to not be cutting through my lining pieces because I'm always scared they are going to fray with use. So I'm just going to do it through my exterior piece like so, and put it through like so. Going to go ahead and put some duct tape or Gorilla Tape over top of those prongs just to make sure they're not going to rub away at my lining. And that is our exterior completely done. And now we can move on to the lining. All right, so now we're going to work on our ID pocket. So you're going to follow the measurements in the pattern for the markings on the wrong side of our ID pocket window and draw them out. And it's going to create a rectangle. And then you're going to draw diagonally from corner to corner. And then we're going to go ahead, I'm going to go in with my rotary cutter. I'm not going to cut right to the ends, just get the line started and then go back in with my scissors and go right into the corners like so. And then I'm going to trim these triangles up to about a 3/8 of an inch-ish, 1/4 of an inch-ish seam allowance like so. And then I'm going to take some double-sided tape And I'm going to press these wrong sides together. So that little seam that we just made, we are going to press it up and over along that line and that tape to hold it in place. Just like so. This should totally enclose raw edges, but just to be safe, I'm going to just take some fray check into those corners just in case there's a little bit of a raw edge peeking through, and I'm going to do that on both sides, and that should stop any fraying that could possibly happen. Okay, so now we're going to measure down as per the, well, we're going to fold in the seam 1/4 inch here. And then we're going to take some more double-sided tape along the long edges. So we have just the left side folded down and under. That's going to be the top of our ID slot. And then you're going to take your clear vinyl. I got this like rainbow clear vinyl that I got from Calla. And we are going to center this over top of that ID window and stick it down to the tape. Okay, and then we're going to, that folded edge we just did, we're going to fold it over the rest of the way over top of that vinyl, and make sure this isn't peeking through the window at all. You just want it to be nice and flush with that ID window. Clip it in place. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch right along here and then top stitch around the ID window. And that's what she looks like all done. Okay, so now we're going to work on card slot A. Now I do this a little different than the pattern, but pretty much the same. So I've marked my top, and I just went and I took the measurements from the pattern. You will be drawing 8 lines as per those measurements. I just found it easier to do this rather than to press it and then do it later. So yes, find the measurements in the pattern for what these lines should be. It goes over 4 steps about what those are. And on every second line, I'm going to go ahead and take my small interfacing pieces, and I'm going to fuse those in place at every second line. And this is going to give a nice rigid top to each of our card slots. Again, I am using EB Fuse Medium from Emmaline bags. You could also use a Pellon 809 here if you prefer. Once that's done, you're going to take the top side here, flip it over so it's right side up. I like to use a piece of comic strip board to get a nice sharp edge. Fold it along that line, right sides together, give it a press, flip everything back so it's wrong side up. And on that next line where that interfacing piece is, you're going to fold it and press it. Now you can keep this right side up, line your cardboard piece or whatever up with that line again and press. And so on and so forth for the rest. And you can see how our card slots are starting to form. And that's card slot A all pressed into place. Now you can kind of look at it, make sure they're all even and straight, and kind of finagle it so it is, and give it another good press. Make sure your card slots are nice and straight. Okay, so we want to make sure that this measures the length as stated in the pattern, and you want to make sure your cards fit in them vertically like so. Once they look good and this piece is as long as you need it to be, we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch along the 4 folded edges. So to do this, you're going to grab that first folded edge, kind of flip everything in behind and top stitch across that. Move to the next one, flip everything up and in behind to just sew through that one, and do that with the other 2 as well. So top stitch, I'm just going to go ahead and baste the sides so my card slots don't shift, making sure they are nice and straight. And I changed into a sweater because I was freezing down in this basement on this glorious rainy day. What we have now, we want to take that ID pocket and line it up at the bottom, matching up that bottom raw edge, making sure it's nice and straight with our card slots. Clip it into place, and then we're going to go ahead and baste this on along those 2 sides and along that bottom. So that is all done. Now we're going to take our card slot backing and we are going to put this right sides together and clip along the left side of that card pocket piece we just finished. Keeping very aware where the bottom is so you know you have this situated properly. And then you're going to kind of fold it up and clip along the raw side on the other side, and you are going to see that our backing is bigger, and that is exactly what we want. So we're going to go down each of these sides with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, making sure that we're keeping that excess backing out of the way and not sewing through it. All right, so that's done. We have this tube. Now we can, on just the left-hand side, we are going to go ahead and trim this down to a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So that's why it's important to be aware of where your bottom is to make sure you're doing it on the correct side, and then you can go ahead and you can flip this right side out. Went ahead and gave it a good press and it's lying nice and flat. And now on the right hand side here, we are going to go ahead and just top stitch along there, which we have done. We can set that aside for now. Okay, so now we're going to work on our card slot B1. So you're going to, once again, going to match the top, and I'm going to measure a 3/4 of an inch line here and then fold in the seam allowance to 3/8 to that line. Now from that folded edge, you're going to start marking as per the pattern pieces where our card slot lines are. Again, I did this slightly different because I'm drawing the lines out and fusing my interfacings on, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold it. So you are going to do this in the exact same fashion that we did with that first card slot. So once we have all of our lines marked like I'm doing now, you will have 8 lines. Make sure your measurements are right so your card slots are good. And then you're going to take those long pieces of interfacing and put them along the second lines and fuse those into place. And then go ahead and do the accordion fold of your card slots to get them going this way, and then make sure a card does fit. And then once again, just like the other ones along the forward card slots, we're going to top stitch them, not the top side, and I've also basted down the sides to hold them in place. I'm going to find my center mark at 4 inches, making sure it's even, and we're going to top stitch up and down to create 8 card slots. So that's that all done. I'm going to just double check that these fit in, still leaving some seam allowance on the raw edges, which mine are. Now you're going to go ahead for your card pockets B2, and you're going to do the exact same process following the same measurements as B1, folding in that top edge and do the exact same thing. So you will notice that B2 is longer. That is what we want. So now we're going to measure in centered 4 inches and I believe it was 4 inches under. We're going to draw a line like so. And we're just going to go from that point there and up and down to create the 8 card slots, just like this. Now on the bottom here, I'm going to draw a 3/4 of an inch line, fold into that line to fold under that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're going to bring these wrong sides together, matching up that both sides of the folded in seam allowances on each end. Quickly go ahead and give this a little bit of a press. And then we're going to go ahead and baste up the sides and top stitch those fold sides in. Make sure your cards still fit, which mine do. And that is all of our card slots done. Okay, so now we're going to work on our zipper pockets. Again, make sure you have it marked nice and center. I've made a center snip. I'm measuring down a 1 inch and then making another 3/8 of an inch line underneath that, measuring in 3/4 of an inch from each side, and we are making our zipper. Most of us already know how to do these zippers. It's just done like any other zipper installation. So this is the lining zipper pocket A lining piece that we are working on. Measure in from those 3/4 inch lines about another 1/4 of an inch. Draw a center line between those 1/4 of an inches and your V's out. I do have tutorials on how to do zippers down in the description if you need it. Now we're going to take our lining main body piece. We're going to find the top center of this. Actually, this isn't main body lining. This is the main body zipper pocket exterior. We're going to measure down at 1/4 of an inch, match up that center so we have these wrong sides together with our pocket lining on top. Take a couple pins and just kind of hold it in place in between. And then we're going to go around that box with a stitch like we have done. I go in with my rotary cutter to those 1/4 of an inch lines and then cut into the V's without cutting your stitches, of course. And then go ahead and bring these 2 pieces wrong sides together by putting that lining piece through that opening like so. And then go ahead and press out those seams nice and flat to make sure we have a nice opening for when we go to install our zipper. So here we go. She looks good. Now we're going to take some double-sided tape here and put it along the long sides here. This really helps keep your zipper in place when doing the zipper pocket. I'm just going to take the paper off of the top part of our tape here. I'm making sure my zipper pull is closing to the left, and I'm going to stick down the tape like so, keeping that zipper tape nice and even on top. Once I like where it is sitting, I will do the same with the bottom side of the rectangle. The tape just gives you such control of having a nice and straight zipper here. And then once that's done, we're going to top stitch this in place around that rectangle. Okay, so that is all done. I'm just going to trim my zipper tape up here because it's a little bit longer. You want it to be about the same width as the lining. Fold your lining up like so and clip just the lining pieces. You're keeping the exterior piece out of the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew the zipper pocket shut on those 3 sides. Holding the exterior piece out of the way. You do not want to be sewing through that exterior piece at all. We just want to be sewing through the things. You're going to hold it out of the way like this, folding it as we go and stitching all the way around. Once that's done, make sure we have no holes. It looks good. You can go ahead and trim your seam allowances up of that zipper pocket. Don't cut into the lining, just the zipper pocket. Okay, so now we're going to take the other exterior pocket piece here. I believe it was called section A, and we are going to sew just along the bottom, making sure we press that seam allowance up towards the zipper pocket. Now we're going to take this card slot here and line it up right along that seam. And we're going to baste the sides in place. Next, we're going to take this pocket here. We're going to put it right sides together and along that raw edge, along the top of our main lining pieces and the bottom of our card slot pieces. We're going to clip those in place. Make sure it's nice and centered. And you will notice it doesn't go all the way to the side, but you're going to go ahead and sew across there. Make sure that seam allowance is pointing towards the pocket. And again, it's okay that that card slot is shorter widthwise than the exterior. The bottom, we're going to fold under the seam allowance by 3/8. And then we're going to fold it up like so, right sides together. Again, we have our card slots kind of hanging up over the top, matching up that folded edge. Clipping these sides into place. We've kind of almost made like a little pocket here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to sew down each of these sides with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, leaving that folded edge open. Once that's done, clip the corners on an angle, trim up that seam allowance, and you will see now that it's the same width as that card slot. Go ahead and turn this right side out, poking out the bottom corners so they're nice and sharp. It's just ingenious how this goes together. And this is what we got. All right, so that folded down edge here, I'm going to just go ahead and use some double-sided tape to hold it in place because that'll be super helpful here momentarily. And same with on this back piece, you're going to go ahead and use some double-sided tape to hold it in place because we want to enclose these raw edges. And we want to make sure this doesn't slip. Then what we're going to do is through here, we're going to go ahead and top stitch along here, and that is going to close up that back, just like so. Okay, so now we're working on our 2 interior zipper pockets in that middle section. So you're going to measure down from the top of the lining, one of the lining pieces as per the pattern measurements, and we are going to create that zipper box just like we did before. Okay, so now we are going to take our exterior piece. Make sure you have it going the right way. I've already done one. I'm just going to do the second one here for you. We're going to match up that top center. So we have these right sides together. This is a lining piece we have on top. And I'm going to put some pins in that rectangle we just drew. Again, you want to make sure that it's the zipper pockets on the bottom shorter side. And we're going to go ahead and install the zippers and cut it just like we did with the other, but we want to make sure our zipper pulls for these two pieces are going opposite directions, and you will see why later. Next, we're going to take the lining sections and bring them together, and we're going to take the exterior sections and bring them together. You will do this with both pocket sections, and it's going to kind of create this figure 8 looking type thing. On both of those sides, we're going to go ahead and we are going to sew those. So that's them all sewn. We can go ahead and trim up the seam allowance. And then we're going to flip this right side out through one of the sides of the tube. And what this is going to give us is a fully aligned tube and our 2 zipper pockets. So to get it so it's near the front, we're going to press out that bottom seam nicely, right along that seam. And you'll see how that brings the zipper pocket forward like that. Go ahead and give those a really good press. Okay, so this is what we've got. I've basted up the sides, and then I went ahead and I top stitched along the top. You do not need to top stitch the bottom. Make sure your zipper pulls are closing in the opposite direction, which mine are. Set those aside for now. Okay, now we're going to work on these welts. So we have 2 sets mirrored to one another. We're going to take a lining and an exterior piece. We're going to put them right sides together like so. You will do this for both welts. You can draw out the lines if you want to get nice sharp corners. I'm lucky because my foot is 1/4 of an inch, so I know I'm going to get a nice and accurate seam allowance. And I'm pretty good at navigating my pivot points. So you're going to clip the bottom as well. And then we're going to sew along these 2 sides with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So that's what they look like. Once again, we're going to go in and we're going to clip right into this V so we can get a sharp center and clip our corners at an angle like so. And then go ahead and turn this right side out. Poke out all of those corners because you really want to have the shape in there. It's really important for when we go to put all the guts of this bag or wallet into place. Go ahead and give that a super good press. So that is done. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch along here, baste the sides, and top stitch along the bottom. So there's our 2 welts done, and we want to mark our welts, figure out which way they go. And we want to draw these lines that are on here. So I'm just using my pattern piece and lining it up along the raw edges that we haven't taken the seam allowances off, and we're going to draw those lines. I'm actually going to go back in with my chalk pen because this pen isn't showing up on this fabric at all. It keeps wanting to air erase, so go in with my chalk pen. So this is marking the lining side, I believe it was, of the welts. So mine are both the same fabric, so it doesn't matter, but you're going to go ahead and you're going to press along those lines for both. So we have something that looks like this. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to fold on those folds. We're going to go ahead and top stitch them. So they're top stitched like so. Now we're going to take our exterior. Now you want to take the one with the zipper pull that closes to the right. And we're going to put it along underneath where our tab was, lining up our edges. So this is the side right underneath our tab, and our zipper pull is closing to the right. So you're going to clip the sides, and we're going to go ahead and baste these. So I'm going to hold all of this out of the way and get as close as I can here. And I'm going to sew right along the bottom of that zipper pocket. Now I kind of have my Decovil Heavy piece kind of folded up and out of the way. That's where that thick bottom part is. And to get nice and close to that, I am going to put on my right zipper foot, and that is just going to make it so I'm not running over that when I have it folded up. It's going to go nice and flush against that. So you can see how my bag is a little bit rigid right where I am. That is that skinny bottom Decovil Heavy piece, and we want to sew right along there to put that bottom in place for this zipper pocket. Now we're just sewing through the lining. We are not sewing through the exterior. You can see I have everything flipped out and up and out of the way. We're just sewing through that tab part. See, and that is all done. It's all floppy. That is what we want. Now we're going to just kind of take that piece we just sewn and fold it out of the way. We're going to take this other piece and we're going to match up. This is where it gets a little bit thick. Those folded under edges of our exterior piece and our lining pieces here, we want to match them up nice and even because we are going to top stitch this here momentarily. Same with the sides. This will just help hold everything in place. You want it to line up perfectly. We're going to do the same with the other side of the zipper pocket or the tab pocket, lining up that top folded edge of that flap and the card slots like so. And along the sides. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch just through that tab piece. So again, we have all of the rest of the wallet folded up and out of the way, and we're just going over that floppy tab section right across there, top stitching it in place. So this is attaching our part of our lining to that flap piece. So make sure everything is lining up so it's nice and even. Okay, so that part is done. See, it's all working as one piece now. Now we're going to do the same with the opposite side that has the zipper pocket and that flap. We're going to make sure they all come together and line up, and that the top part we're not going to be sewing across because that is a slip pocket. So we're gonna flip everything out of the way, and we're going to sew and baste just up these sides, just through this flap part. So I'm going to change back into my standard foot here. I no longer need my zipper foot. The standard foot does give me a little bit more control. And then I'm going to baste up those sides. We're not worrying about these raw edges at all because these will be taken care of once we install the welts. Flap done and complete. Whew. Now what we're going to do is on this exterior piece, we're going to sew across here with 2 lines of top stitching, making sure everything stays nice and lined up. So we're going to go in, and this is where it gets thick if you're using vinyl. So be prepared for that if you are using vinyl. So I'm going to go in with an 1/8 of an inch top stitch seam allowance, and then I'm going to go back in with a 1/4 of an inch top stitch seam allowance. Okay, so that's what that looks like all done. She's looking good. I've still got my sides clipped in place. We want to make sure they're not going to move. Now we're going to want to sew though. So that little opening right here, there's like a little teeny tiny hole there. I'm just going to take a pin and put it through that hole. And that is going to be, I said, just between the layers. It's just going to give me an idea where I need to stop when I go to top stitch these sides in place. So you're going to go down to that pin with an 1/8 of an inch top stitch and a 1/4 of an inch top stitch, and just like we did the top, stopping at that pin. Okay, so that's what that looks like. She's looking good so far. Whew, this is intense. Now to do these welts. So we want to mark which one is our back piece. So kind of put it up against the pattern piece and mark back, or just a B. Now this confused me a little bit, but I did eventually get it. So we're going to take this card slot piece that has the backing. We're going to measure in 3/8 of an inch, mark it with some chalk or what have you. And we're going to use some double-sided tape. Put it right along that line. And then we're going to take our welts, the side that says back. So remember, these are mirrored to one another. So this will, so the pleats are kind of facing down. So the lining side is down. You're going to match this up along that line, and you're going to see how this lines up with that raw edge, because these are going to engulf that raw edge. You're going to flip this over so our card slots are front facing. I went ahead and I just basted those in place so they wouldn't move, just along the raw edges of the card slots. Now we're going to take another little bit of double-sided tape right along the raw edges of the card slots. And we are going to fold them right over like this, over top of that raw edge. So now our exterior pieces, or our exterior of our welts, are facing outward, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch those with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to put it all together. So this is what that looks like. Kind of reminds me of bat wings. I'm going to just double check that my cards still fit in there after sewing that seam allowance, and they do. Okay, so now what we want to do is along these card slots here, along that raw edge, we're going to use some double-sided tape. And we are going to take the welt part that we just did, and we are going to put it, make sure our card slots are right side up, and we're going to line the other raw edge of the welts against that tape. Again, you're going to see how it's going to be the exact same height as those card slots, because this is going to engulf those raw edges. So it looks a little awkward here. Just go with it. You'll see how it comes together. And we're going to go ahead and we are going to sew those on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. It's very important that you do a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance here. My brain go, but what we're going to do is we're going to kind of pull the flap over and we're going to flip it like so. And then that 3/8 that we just sewn, we're going to wrap the welt around like this, right along that seam allowance, and hold it in place with clips on both sides. It's just ingenious how this goes together. And then we're going to have to kind of hold everything out of the way, because we are going to top stitch those clipped edges with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Actually, I lied. We're going to go right along the folded seam, so on the welt side, just to hold it in place. It works out to be about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance or so, but right along that seam. Okay, so that's done. Take deep breaths. Now we got to do this other zipper pocket. So I've trimmed 1/4 inch off of each side of the remaining zipper pocket, and I've basted the sides again. Now we're going to stick this in the middle here. So that last remaining section of the welt, you're going to match up those seams and kind of sandwich that in place. So you want to make sure that your zipper pockets are facing each other. So this should be facing the zipper pocket that's inside with our zipper pulls going the same direction. Take your time here to make sure that raw edge is going to get caught in our stitching and that there's no raw edges sticking out, like so. And same with the other raw edge, making it nice and centered. So using the welts that we've already sewn to get it nice and centered really truly does help. And then once again, we're going to have to pinch everything out of the way and sew down here with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold that pocket in place. Take some deep breaths. Look what we've accomplished. This is amazing. Okay, whew, now on this remaining side that has nothing, we're going to put some double-sided tape down the sides. And then what we're going to do is that whole section that we just sewn, we're going to bring it up like this, matching up those folded edges. Make sure this is nice and even, because we are going to be top stitching through all of these layers. Again, this is where if you're using vinyl, it's going to be super thick. But cottons definitely wouldn't be a problem. So line them up perfectly. We are almost done, you guys. So take your time here to make sure everything is perfectly aligned. I'm going to use some clips to hold it in place as well as the tape, because I definitely don't want this shifting on me. Okay, and we're going to fold everything out of the way. So we're just sewing through that exterior with 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch top stitch on both sides. Now I had a hard time getting all the way across the bottom because I was scared I was going to catch my welts, but that's okay. It doesn't have to go all the way across the bottom. Just get it to match up the best you can. Nobody is going to notice that bottom section. So go ahead and top stitch these in place. Okay, so this is where I said I didn't quite get all the way over, but it's okay. I'm gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna make sure everything works. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Look at that. Like seriously? So many pockets. Make sure everything lines up. Pat yourself on the back. You did an amazing job. And we're done.
All right, that's it. That's all. What did you guys think of that? Oh my gosh. So the exterior comes together really fast. The lining, there's so much to the lining, but I'm just in such awe to how this comes together. Yeah, this is going to be one of my go-to wallets. I love it. Anyways, if you did like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you'd like to support my channel further, you can always buy me a coffee. That link is down below in the description. And definitely check out my membership site in case there's some sew along classes there that may interest you. Anyways, until the next one, I'll catch you later. Bye.